Welcome to another episode of the Mad Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Begley, Goni, and Wayne.
What is up, Mad Mob? This episode is brought to you by Kona Ice. If you hear crunching or slurping in the background, it's because Begley he found a snow cone machine and he's done nothing but tear it up for a week straight.
Wouldn't you? Snow cones are delicious. And it's shaved ice. It's not a snow cone.
What's the difference?
There's a huge difference.
Can you explain it?
Yeah, it's the way the ice is made. A snow cone is like super finely crushed up ice, like out of your fridge. Shaved ice is where the ice is literally shaved into a soft snow into your cup. That's what I have.
That's what he has.
It's a snow cone.
It's not.
I've partaken from it.
I hate snow cones.
Gone. How are you? You look deep in thought over there.
I am, man. I'm just going through some statistics and football things, really.
Things.
I'm really excited. Yeah, football things.
Mad Mob, it is our last episode. Our last episode of the the Dark Horses.
Dark Horses.
The Dark Busts. The Dark Horses, Busts, and Locks. We are doing the Weast.
Wayne, we're one step closer to Goni's least favorite episode of all time, where we had the crappy player draft. God, he hated that. Do you remember that last year?
I remember that. We got a lot to do. We got a lot to do before the season starts and not a lot of time to do it. We have mock drafts we got to do. We're going to do some quick rankings and the crappy player draft. And it kind of stinks because I wanted to do a doink review. But we don't really have too many doinks so far. I feel like a lot of our doinks are made in season.
I think so too. And I think this episode may bear out some doinks.
It already has, off air.
It has. We'll get into it later, but I was pinned against the wall for a dark horse, which somebody said they would never do.
Well, when one's so stupid, I can't help it. We'll start with the AFC. Beggs, I got you at the top part of the clockwise position, so you can start us off.
You were pointing at me on my screen.
It doesn't matter what is happening on your screen.
I'm just letting you know. I'm giving you a play-by-play, man. All right?
All right. I'm actually going to look this guy's ADP up. I'm sorry. I didn't do that on air.
Wow.
It's not a big deal. I'm just going to do it really quick.
Huge deal. Annoying.
Man, this is all on Wayne. This is all on Wayne for putting you out of position. And also, he put me in rotation to absolutely cut him off again.
No, I know what he did, and I appreciate it. All right, my AFC lock. Samaje Perine. ADP of 108. And he is a guy that I am buying in every redraft league that I'm in if I can. So, a couple of tidbits. He got a 2-year deal. He's 27, got a 2-year deal worth $7.5 million from Denver. He's one of the highest paid free agent backs this year. They only brought in Tony Jones and Tyler Beatty as the backup RBs on the roster. Neither one of them really profile as receiving backs. So I think Perine brings a dimension to that backfield that nobody else brings, and that is very good receiving chops. And as we know from Sean Payton's time in New Orleans, he loves to utilize a running back in the passing game. Last year, Russell Wilson had the 5th highest checkdown rate in the league at 10%, and he would have been higher except Baker Mayfield and Tyler Heineke made their way on the list. Last year with Cincy, he ran 214 routes. He was 14th best among running backs in yards per reception, yards per route run, and he generated just under 1 fantasy point per opportunity, which was 11th best among all running backs. Very good in the passing game. And I think the other component you have to consider is Javonte Williams. He's coming back from an ACL tear and an LCL tear, which is a very serious injury. The last two examples we have of that are J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Neither one of them really returned healthy. And I think I was looking up some research, and players with an ACL and LCL tear historically see a 20% decline in production when they return to the field. Javonte, of the 2-year sample we have of him, he has only eclipsed the 65% snap share mark twice. And in one of those games, Melvin Gordon was injured. He's never had a full workload, and I doubt he gets it coming off a serious injury. I think Samaje Perine is on the field often and early for Denver. I want him.
He's a guy I scooped up everywhere I could get him. Actually, in one of our leagues, I have Javonte, and as soon as it was known that Samaje Perine was going to the Broncos, I went ahead and spent some fab on him. He's a great handcuff. I think he has standalone value, as you were pretty much saying throughout everything going on here. If there's any setbacks also with Javonte this year and the ACL, LCL injury, Samaje Perine has shown in the past that he can step in for a few games and play. He can handle a workload. It's not something that's going to be frequent, but I like him. I like him a lot. Like you said, he could be the kind of Kamara in this Sean Payton offense to the Mark Ingram, which would be Javonte. So we'll see.
Yeah, I like Samaje in Cincinnati. He did a good job backing up Joe Mixon. Showed that he's definitely got the talent to be one of the best receiving backs in the year. Kind of the second coming of Kareem Hunt.
And it's a spot in the draft. Rashad Penny, Charbonnet, who's hurt right now, Khalil Herbert, Odell Beckham, Elijah Moore. To me, I like his upside above all those guys.
Yeah. I'm going to stay right with the Broncos for my AFC lock. I'm taking Jerry Jeudy. Currently has an ADP of 55 as the wide receiver 24. That is fifth round. I know he's got a lot of hype behind his name this year. He's a guy people are expecting to blow up, especially after the abysmal season of the Broncos and that offense. He finished last season as the wide receiver 22. He's going as the wide receiver 24 in drafts. And he finished as the wide receiver 22 last year in that terrible offense. The same offense that was 21st in the league in total offense last year. Same offense that was 28th in touchdowns and last in the league in red zone scoring. He finished with 67 receptions, 962 yards, and 6 touchdowns on 100 targets. Russell Wilson, everyone knows, had by far the worst season of his career. Sean Payton comes in. He's replacing Nathaniel Hackett, who was fired because he sucks, straight up. In the games with Hackett, the Broncos averaged 15.4 points per game. It's awful. In the games without Hackett, they averaged 10 points more, 25 total. So the offense immediately got better. Like I said, I want to say it one more time. He finished as the wide receiver 22. He's going in drafts right now as the wide receiver 24. I expect him to finish a lot higher. I think he's a lock as a wide receiver 2 and could flirt with wide receiver 1 this year.
I agree with that. Just curious. I mean, ADP is kind of bearish on Broncos in general. The Sean Payton hype isn't really reflected. I don't know why.
I think it's everyone saw Russell Wilson. You know how he wanted to leave Seattle and he wanted to cook, and this was his opportunity last year, and he was terrible. So maybe everyone just thinks he's washed. I don't know, but I think the entire offense will be just rejuvenated with Sean Payton in there.
Yeah, I like this. I think Jerry Jeudy is even closer to a dark horse than a lock. He's definitely. I love that lock pick. If he's your WR2, you're sitting pretty this year.
Yep.
All right, moving on to my lock. I'm going to go away from the Broncos for once. I'm taking Mike Williams, ADP 70, wide receiver 30. Last year, Mike Williams finished as the WR32. 2 off of his ADP this year, even though he missed 4 games last year. He's a bit of a feast or famine guy, which is why he's a lock back here and not a dark horse candidate. He finished as a WR15 or better in 6 of his 13 games played. Big target at 6'4", 218. Look for him to continue his role as the safety net for Justin Herbert, who just got extended. Williams is extremely average in most metrics, but what makes him worthy of a lock at this ADP, again, mid-tier flex, is his ability to win contested balls. He was top 10 in contested catch rate and top 10 in contested targets, which landed him at number 3 in contested receptions in the NFL. With Keenan Allen still the one and Johnston coming up, his ceiling is pretty firm, but at this ADP, you'll love to see him in the flex on your squad.
I think Mike Williams is that guy to me that when you look back on the year and you look at total fantasy points scored, he's going to be just fine. But I think he's on the same token, when you own him and you have to deal with him every week, you're going to pull your hair out and you think he sucks.
It's a wild ride. It's a wild ride with Mike Williams, man.
I agree with you. I think at the end of the year, when you look at his production, I think he is going to be there. Just not a guy I want to have on my roster if I can help it.
I like having one of those guys personally. If you ever have, any kind of injuries, you're not always going to be the favorite in your fantasy matchups. Let me just say that. You're not always going to be a favorite in your fantasy matchups. Injuries happen. You kind of sometimes need a guy like a Mike Williams that has the high variance. He's feast or famine, but sometimes you need that shot. The other team, the opponent, can have a guy that just goes off, and you need 30 points out of a guy. Mike Williams has capability to do that kind of stuff. Also, I think something that people forgot last year was Justin Herbert, very early on in the season, had some kind of injury, shoulder injury, I believe. And we thought that he was going to miss time. He didn't. He actually, in the same game, threw like a 40-yard dart to end up winning the game, I believe, down the stretch. Yeah, that's gone. He still threw for 4,500 yards. He's going to be fully healthy this year. The offense is, I think, going to be pushing the ball down the field more than in recent years. Not really going to the running back as much. They brought in Quentin Johnston. They want to throw the ball down the field. They got all these guys. They got Kellen Moore as well. I like the pick, Wayne.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the busts. My AFC bust, Kadarius Toney. And I feel like I'm fading the general public here. As I think we've seen his ADP rise. Right now it's 92. I'm not sure what wide receiver he is. But let's call it what it is. He's all hype, no production so far, right? If you look at his profile, he had the 1 year in New York, or the one game in New York where he went nuts against Dallas. Outside of that, he really hasn't done much. He had 2 wide receiver 2 finishes with the Chiefs last year. And in both of those games, he had 30 yards and a rushing touchdown. He's never earned over a 44% snap share. He never earned over 5 targets in Kansas City in a game. In college, he wasn't really a super productive player. He was a gadget guy at Florida. To me, he's a Percy Harvin, Tavon Austin type of player. And I think, those are the guys that coaches get, try to give them the ball in space, but they're not going to win with their route running or their route tree. To me, that's what he is. He's already hurt. He tore his meniscus in camp. At some point in a 2-year profile, I've got to see you play. I've got to see you play through soft tissue injuries, which plagued him in New York. In an ADP of 92, he's got such a low floor. And, he has probably the biggest range of outcome of any player, I think, in fantasy this year. He could be the wide receiver 8 or the wide receiver 100, and I wouldn't be surprised. But at 92, there's such a low floor. When I look at the guys around him, I think there's much safer options there in the 8th round that have enough upside to satisfy my appetite, like Dotson, Burks, Antonio Gibson, Quentin Johnston, even Mike Thomas, Juju, Gabe Davis. These are guys that I feel more comfortable with drafting in the 8th than Kadarius. I I'd rather have Scott Moore, to be honest with you, 50 picks later. I'm going to fade Kadarius at 92. What do you guys think?
I like him, man. I like him for the cost, really. He's the wide receiver 40. I looked it up, and I don't know, man. It's just one of those appealing things that you've gotten out of all the Kansas City wide receivers over the last couple of years. Everyone looks appealing. You're waiting for one of them to break out. None of them really have, since Tyreek left. I don't know. I kind of would you be down to put a doink on it that he finishes 40 or better?
I would love to.
All right, I'll get in there on that.
I would love to. I mean, he is the grab the dice, shake him, and roll him guy, man. Like I said, he's just injured a lot. It's almost like his body can't keep up with his movements. I mean, he's special when he has the ball. Don't get me wrong, but man, what do you think, Wayne?
I think Kadarius Toney is a freak athlete that they're going to utilize more next year. I think his ADP, in my opinion, is pretty fair. To me, though, I don't want any part of the Chiefs receiving core when you consider the fact that Patrick Mahomes threw for over 5,000 yards last year and it didn't produce a single, not even a WR2 for anybody. And now they went and drafted another guy, so you've got a crowded receiver room with Kadarius Toney, MVS, Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, and none of those guys are even his number one target. So I'm not really a big fan of any Chiefs receiver this year, but I think an ADP of 40, wide receiver 40, is definitely attainable in that offense.
He broke 200 yards in a game, man. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. He's got talent. He just needs to stay on the field, not do anything dumb.
Yeah. To be fair, that was also against a historically poor Dallas defense that year. That was one of the worst in the league.
How many times did they give up 200 yards in a game, though, that year?
I don't know. I'd have to
Probably
look.
just once.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm just saying 200-yard games don't fall off trees. It
Correct.
could be nothing. I could lose this one in a just blaze of glory here. And he could be like the wide receiver 99 for all I know. But we'll see. I'm going to take the talent. I'm going to take the offense and just cross my fingers on it. Moving on. My AFC bust. This one pains my soul. Absolutely pains my soul. It's Austin Eckler with an ADP of 4. Running back 2. Disclaimer, I love Austin Eckler. I've been rolling with him for the last 5 years. He's delivered championships. Wayne and I rode ourselves to a championship off his back as well. He's amazing. This is absolutely not easy for me, but it has everything to do with the fact that this man is going as the 104 in drafts and the second running back off the board this year. He's coming off a career year. He finished as the overall running back 1, setting personal bests in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, targets, receptions. No running back in football has more touchdowns than him over the last 2 years with 38. He runs, he catches, he does it all. So why am I against him? Major thing, Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator for the last 2 years, has gone to the Denver Broncos, and that's very, very important. His scheming and play calling has resulted in a ton of receiving work for running backs. I looked back into it. Going all the way back to 2015, he was with the Lions. Theo Riddick with the Lions was a running back 18 with 99 targets. Kamara, over his tenure with Lombardi, 2017 to 2020, he was the RB3, RB4, RB9, and RB1, averaging 102 targets a year. That's a whole lot of targets. Kamara, after Lombardi, he finished 8th and 16th at his position, averaging 72 targets per season. So Eckler over his last 2 years finished as the RB2 and the RB1, averaging 115 targets a season. So this is the Lombardi effect right here, man. The scheme, he throws it to the running backs. He makes sure they're always involved. In comes Kellen Moore from Dallas as the new offensive coordinator. The primary running back has never seen more than 71 targets in a season under Kellen Moore. And some of you might be thinking that Eckler did it before without Lombardi, and he did it once in 2019 as the RB4, but it was with the very old Phillip Rivers. We all know the old guys check down to the running backs like crazy. He's going to be 28 years old this season. He's never ran for over 1,000 yards in his career. He's never had more than 206 carries in his career. I think he's great. I think he's phenomenal. He'll always be one of my favorite. He's going into the Goney Hall of Fame of fantasy, but I don't see him finishing in the top 2 running backs this year. I think he's going to be a back-end RB1, and that's why I have to have him as a bust.
Yeah, when I saw you put this one down, it did make me spit up my drink. I agree with your logic. I guess let me ask you this: are you taking Bijan or Eckler? The second RB off the board. Okay.
Bijan.
Okay. I mean, the one hesitation I have with not pulling the trigger on Eckler at 4 is who's taking his carries. What have they done to get him off the field? I think he's going to be on the field a lot. And I think Kellen Moore does like a workhorse, as we saw with Zeke in Dallas.
Josh Kelly, man. Josh Kelly last year. I know. I see your face, bro. Believe me, there was plenty of games last year. Wayne, Gels, and I are just watching the game, texting back and forth, and Josh Kelly is on the field getting carries in positions that he has no business getting carries in. We're texting each other, why is he getting the ball right now? Why is he even on the field? So I don't know why, because Josh Kelly sucks, but Austin Eckler's
it's almost like they're trying to replace him.
Yeah. Or limit the value because of these contracts.
Yeah, I think they have been, man. They've drafted running backs the last 5 drafts, it seems like. Larry Roundtree, Spiller, Kelly, Justin Jackson.
I forgot about Roundtree. Larry Roundtree. That's right. Dude, he's never gotten over 206 carries in a season. They've found places to give the ball elsewhere. Where he eats and how he's gotten so high in the fantasy finishes has always been his receiving work. It's coming down. There's nothing that can tell me otherwise. Joe Lombardi absolutely matters in that aspect. So
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, you lose 30 targets this year. I just don't see it. I don't know, man. He's not rushing for over 1,000 yards. If he does, it's going to be barely. It's not going to be RB2 worthy.
Yeah, regardless, we're putting Austin Eckler we're putting an Austin Eckler banner in the rafters of the Fantasy Coliseum. He's been a stud, but
hey, and that's a bronze bust of him, man, going up in the Hall of Fame and the trophy case.
Exactly, and it says a lot about you that we're calling you a bust and you're still an RB1. A
Fact.
Bust year for you is a back end RB1. So if this is Eckler's last year at it, tip of the cap. You've been a dog. I'll go to my bust. I'm taking another RB1 as a bust. Josh Jacobs, ADP 20, RB 8. It's kind of a hot take considering where he finished last year. Finished second in rush attempts at 340, top 10 in receptions, fourth in tutties, with over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. From an efficiency standpoint, he ranked in the back half of the league in yards per rush, breakaway runs, but a shining light was his number 1 ranked 1,200 yards created. A lot went right for Jacobs to finish as the running back 3 last year, with Zamir White emerging as a solid backup and the Raiders ranking 21st in rush attempts, as well as the addition of Jacoby Myers. I see a steep drop-off in touches. Guys with worse ADPs like Pollard, Brees, and Najee are a lot more appealing to me this year. I know there's some stirrings about Dalvin going to New York, which will obviously change my opinion a little bit on that. But just not to mention the fact that Jacobs turned down a deal that would make him a top 5 paid running back, and a holdout is almost all but certain. The last running back to hold out into the season was Melvin Gordon, and we saw how that ended out for him. There's just no way that they can recreate the amount of touches that he got last year, and we're getting a new quarterback in the system. And again, only 21st in rush attempts, and he got 340. That's not going to happen. There's going to be a steep regression, in my opinion, on this guy.
Love the pick personally. That's just a guy who's not involved in the passing game hardly at all. Don't know what to think about Garoppolo going there. Plus, I don't love RBs on their second contract. He's absolutely a sell for me. I agree, Wayne.
He's a guy that's 100% on my do not draft list. I'm more so worried about the holdout over anything else. You don't want to draft a guy who's not going to play, which is also a great reason, everyone, to make sure you don't do your fantasy drafts until like a week before the season's going to start. That way you see how this thing plays out. But if you're doing yours beforehand, it's risky. It's very risky. I'm personally staying away.
All right. Moving our way to our AFC dark horses. And boy, I've been waiting for this one. I'm calling my shot the Babe style. Give me Justin Ross, wide receiver for Kansas City. I'm going to pull up his ADP. He's been shooting up the draft boards like crazy. He's up to 198. Yes, Wayne, he's out of the 200s now. He's getting the buzz. He's 6'4", 210. And I'm gonna steal what you said, Wayne, about Mike Williams. He's a big boy. I think Brandon Marshall, AJ Green type of build. And look, Kansas City lost 38% of its wide receiver snaps from last year. It has arguably the worst wide receiver room in the entire league. Their best receiver, Kadarius Toney, has proven he can't stay healthy. He's got a torn meniscus, and he's got to compete with MVS and Justin Watson to play on the outside. He was a top prospect out of Clemson after a sophomore year. Then it was found he's got a degenerative spinal issue that caused him to lose out on his junior year of college. Played 10 games his senior year. Then he tore up his foot. And, man, this is a guy you just want to root for. He was undrafted because only 4 NFL teams medically cleared him. Kansas City took a stab on him just because of the talent. And not only did Kansas City take a stab on him, they kept him on the 90-man roster in the offseason while he rehabbed from a broken foot suffered last year. Teams don't keep undrafted free agents on the 90-man to let them rehab on their dime. Just doesn't happen. And I think it really speaks to his talent and what he can do on the field. He's really something unique that Kansas City doesn't have in their wide receiver room. Pat Mahomes, I've got a couple quotes. He told Nate Taylor of The Athletic, he's learning the offense fast. You can see the talent, the way he snatches the ball out of the air. He's making big plays, and he's getting more and more involved in first-team reps. He's a guy that I hope can be a really good player in the offense. Matt Nagy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator. When you watch Ross, he really excels at route running. Last year was almost kind of a redshirt year for him. And, he was mentally in the meetings. Now he's learning his timing for Pat to understand his routes. So it's going to be immense growth in a good way. Andy Reid. I like the big Ross. Justin is coming along. He feels good. His foot feels good. He's made some really nice plays for us out here. I know Pat's got trust in him, which is good to see. Pat Mahomes' dad.
Son.
I'm not kidding.
Come on, bro.
Justin Ross has been working out with Pat in his house. He's a name to look out for. He's got the buzz. He's got the hype. Good Morning Football has Justin Ross, top 5 breakout wide receiver of 2023 behind Garrett Wilson, Olave London, and Tyquan Thornton. There's a lot of beat writers very excited about Justin Ross. And look, let me break down the logic for you. He cost you nothing. He's going to be the last player you draft in a redraft. But again, I'm going to steal from a good buddy of mine, Wayne. If no Kansas City receiver outside of Tyreek Hill is great, then why would you pay a premium price for Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice? Why not take the guy who has the hype and has an outside chance of being on the field as the X receiver in this offense at a zero cost. That makes sense to me. Absolutely no risk. You can cut him after you draft him if he doesn't make camp, but he's going to be on my roster. I think people would spend a lot of fab dollars on this guy if he makes the field for Kansas City.
Cashier down at the bodega on the end of the block. Justin Ross always pays with exact change.
Listen, here's why.
Police officer in the city. Justin Ross has never jaywalked once in his life.
Here, listen, I had to go.
Justin Ross's father. Justin always turned out the lights when he left the room.
Listen, I had to tell you that because these are the people that matter. And how many undrafted free agents do you hear people raving about like this? The OC, star quarterback, the head coach. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was just looking because like a month ago he was their WR8 on their depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured all that buzz, like I went and checked again because I figured with all that buzz he would have jumped. And their most recent depth chart, he was their WR8. That's weird. I guess good quotes don't translate into improving on the depth chart, but that's a shame because if good quotes did, look out Tyreek Hill. He's the next one.
Wait till the preseason's over. The 90 will trim down to 53. We'll see what happens.
I don't hate you for taking a shot on a guy, and I hope he pans out. I really do. The quotes, though, at this point in the season don't matter to me either way.
You mean the coaches and teammates didn't say negative things about a teammate?
That's the only time you have to worry. Everyone is going to say good things about every player on their team. They're in the best shape of their life. They're looking great. His hands are phenomenal. But like every single coach and beat writer ever says those things at this point in the preseason. But if you ever hear something bad, that's the real stuff right there. That's how you know red flags, stay away.
And he only took first team reps because MVS and Rashee Rice were out. He had to step in, and they only kept him on the roster after his foot injury because he was paid a league minimum. So why not?
It doesn't happen though. Like you know that, right? Undrafted free agents don't stay on teams 90 mans in rehab for free on their dime. It just doesn't happen. And I told you the quotes because
that's
again,
such an obscure thing to say though. Like I'm sure it does happen.
I challenge you all. Find somebody who's getting this kind of buzz from their coaches and teammates who is an undrafted free agent who hasn't played in 2 years. I challenge you to find.
That's extremely specific. That's extreme. It's out of his class.
Find me an undrafted free agent. Just find me an undrafted free agent then. Or find me somebody who hasn't played football in 2 years who's getting that kind of buzz.
Honestly, I can look up anything and hear about it. The fact of the matter is, until you said Justin Ross's name to me as your dark horse, I never heard that name in my life.
Well, that's because I'm in here and I'm in the fantasy weeds, man. You're not here with me. That's all right. I'll learn you something.
I mean, looking at past fantasy finishes, buddy, I've been in the trenches. I'm out here in the foxholes.
You know, the other thing about Justin Ross, man, he's been in the league 2 years. He's the same age as Rashee Rice. He's a baby. You know, why not take a stab with your last pick? Why not? Who else are you going to spend it on that has more upside than a first-round talent on the best offense in the league?
Is he first round, though, if he went undrafted?
Well, he is. He wasn't medically cleared. He was similar to Sean Tucker.
He wasn't medically cleared, and he went undrafted. So for the sake of my argument, yeah, I mean, he was first-round talent. Yep.
He was.
He was number one pick. He was going to be the number one pick that year if Coach would have put me in.
He was number one pick, but after his sophomore year in Clemson, I looked up some draft boards, and he was projected to be a first-round pick on pretty much every draft board I could find online. And then he's got a disease or degenerative issue. There's a name for it. And because of it, he didn't know if he would play football again. So he missed out his entire junior year. And then he played 10 games his senior year, declared. Nobody would clear him except for the Chiefs and 3 others. Chiefs took a stab, man. Again, it's similar to the Sean Tucker thing with the Bucks. He had the heart condition. Elite player at Syracuse. Better than where he got drafted. Or I guess he didn't get drafted. Better than being undrafted. Hey, look, man, it's a good guy to root for. Again, it costs you nothing. It costs you your last pick in a redraft league. I want a piece of the KC offense, and I don't want to pay Kadarius Toney price because, like Wayne said, we haven't seen a receiver be good in that outside of Tyreek Hill. So I don't want to pay a premium price. I want to pay the cheapest price possible for a guy who could be a starter. That's logical to me.
That's fair. That's fair. The waiter at Malone's also said he always tips 25%, in case you were wondering.
He seems like a great guy.
Yeah, and he's definitely not dining and dashing with the piano he carries on his back.
Listen.
He ain't burning anybody. Heck, I'm looking at his college stats now. His worst year as far as yards per catch was his most recent year he played. And I hear foot surgeries make you better.
They don't. They don't. Yeah, he had a foot surgery that year, played 10 games. And again, he was also coming off of some pretty shocking medical news. And he played with DJ, who is probably been the worst Clemson quarterback in a decade.
I'm looking at his stats, and it looks like he's done nothing but regress. His best year at Clemson was his freshman year. His second best was his sophomore year. His junior year he missed, and his senior year was his worst year. So since his freshman year in college, he's done nothing but regress and get hurt. Interesting.
He came out like a bottle rocket his freshman year. You say he regressed, and I don't disagree with you, but his sophomore year stats were still very, very good.
But his physical therapist says he has great manners and holds the door open for old ladies.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure he does. Seems like a great kid. Watched a lot of interviews.
Oh man! All right, we're gonna stay. Beggs and I were definitely in sync here with the teams where we took our spots. My AFC dark horse is Isaiah Pacheco. His ADP is 75, RB 28, which is currently being drafted in the 7th round. He was a popular 3rd round dynasty draft target last year, largely undrafted in redrafts. It wasn't until CEH was injured with a high ankle sprain last year that Pacheco finally got steady playing time. From week 11 to the end of the season, he averaged 12.3 points per game on a 44% snap share. Not a lot by any means. That number's going to go up this year. CEH is so deep in the doghouse that it's going to take famine, sickness, or death to get him back on the field to his teammates. The Chiefs also made no efforts to sign or draft any noteworthy running backs this offseason, so they're going to run it back with Pacheco, McKinnon, and CEH. So, as I said, he was hurt with the ankle sprain. He got activated off the IR right before the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs elected not to play him, instead giving Pacheco 15 carries in the biggest game of the season, in which he turned into 76 yards and a touchdown. He's got strength. He's got speed. The Chiefs trust him. And, I mean, some of the running backs going ahead of him that I think he has a chance to beat, Rashad White, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, and Alexander Madison. I think 28 is too low for him. I think he can definitely be a top 20 running back this year.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I'm not a big fan of Pacheco. I think he's he's a classic dead zone running back. It's his passing profile, man. 13 receptions. McKinnon is clearly their 3rd down guy. And I just think that limits Pacheco's upside. Not a guy that I'm really looking to get. What about you, Wayne?
To me, Pacheco is more of a lock than a dark horse, in my opinion. There's just so much going on that Chiefs offense. If your name isn't Patrick or Travis, I don't want you on my team, and that's just plain and simple. I mean, everything's so watered down. He spreads the ball way too much. It's a pass first, second, third, and fourth offense. But again, I've always said this: if you're the RB1, you deserve a roster spot. This is just more of in my opinion, more of a lock, more so than a dark horse.
I don't hate that. I 100% agree with you, Beggs. he could definitely use an uptick in targets. That would absolutely bring him to the next level as far as a fantasy finish goes. But I mean, he was highly successful last year with just 44% of the carries. He was a rookie. And with Patrick Mahomes snapping the ball, man, you've got the entire defense worried about the pass. You got the safeties back. You just need to run through the open holes, man. I'm not saying it's going to be super easy for him, but I feel like 28 is a little disrespectful.
Could be.
That's all.
Let's
But
be
we'll
honest.
see.
After what we just did to Justin Ross, Begley's going to have his claws out on every player we mention.
Not true at all. Not true at all.
All right. Well, let's see. My AFC dark horse. It's my turn to head to the Broncos. I'm going with Javonte Williams. ADP 77, RB 29, behind Pacheco. Last year was a dumpster fire, and honestly, it's probably better that he was hurt for the season. In his last full season, he finished as a running back 17, sharing the rock with Melvin Gordon. Now he's got Samaje Perine back there, which you've already heard from us. We think all of us think he's a very good backup. But that, again, as far as volume share, he was almost a straight 50-50 with Melvin Gordon when he finished as the RB17. And if Samaje Perine gets that, I still think he's safe. In 2021, Javonte ranked 6th in yards created, 6th in evaded tackles, and 9th in juke rate, which are all extremely important metrics considering that going into this season, it's a passing game that has a lot to prove that nobody's really scared of. I'm optimistic in Sean Payton turning the offense around and making Javonte an integral part of it. Payton has always managed to get the best out of his running backs. When you look at who he's coached, he's had Deuce McAllister, Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, and Mark Ingram, and Alvin Kamara. I believe Javonte can be another name added to the list of extremely effective Sean Payton running backs.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the pick completely. No, I'm just kidding, man. I like it. I mean, he's in that dead zone kind of territory with Pacheco. Man, he just makes me nervous because of the injury. His rookie year in 2021, he was just really efficient on the ground. I think a lot of games he's averaged like 6 yards per carry. I think for me with Javonte is if he can get involved in the passing game a little bit, and be on the field for that 60% snap share mark, to the moon for me.
It all just depends what Sean Payton can do to the offense, right?
I love Javonte Williams this year, man. Like, he's a guy that I'm definitely looking to get everywhere. I don't know. He'll probably be 50-50 to start the season, but I feel like down the stretch when you're going towards the playoffs, I think he could be a league-winning type of guy. I think he's really good. I think that he just needs the opportunity and needs to see the field.
Yeah.
Let's go to the NFC, boys.
I agree. NFC lock. I'm going to switch up the rotation just because I can't wait to talk about my guy, Hollywood Brown. ADP of 70, wide receiver of 28. If you've listened to the show, you guys know that I write love letters to Hollywood Brown in my free time. We've talked about it before, so I'm going to be pretty brief. Wide receiver 4 last year before the injury to Kyler and the injury to Hollywood, I should say, not Kyler. D-Hop is gone. He is the clear wide receiver 1 out in Arizona. Only scored 3 touchdowns last year, by the way. I think he is a candidate for positive touchdown regression, considering he scored 3 touchdowns on 107 targets. He's a true 4-3 guy, man. He's a burner. He's a 99th percentile speed kind of guy in the league. Cardinals gave up a lot to bring him there, including a first-round pick. He's going to be on the field. Same for Kyler. Again, Cardinals invested a lot in Kyler. I know there's some questions about whether he's going to be ready week 1 or not. It doesn't matter. I think Hollywood's going to be just fine with or without him. Obviously, we prefer Kyler on the field. Last year, if you take out the injury, he was on pace for 151 targets, including the games with DeAndre Hopkins. And I honestly think that's well within his range of outcomes this year. I think the Cardinals are going to have to throw the ball. Pro Football Focus graded them as the worst offensive line heading into 2023. Plus, the Cardinals are going to be very good. I think they're going to be behind a lot. They're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. And one really interesting stat that I found, Pro Football Focus has an expected fantasy points per game metric, which is really interesting. And, last year he graded out to be the second most unlucky wide receiver in the league. So he was expected to earn just over 14.5 fantasy points per game, ended at 13, which was the difference between wide receiver 27 and wide receiver 15. And I think a lot of that has to do with that touchdown regression. So super high on Hollywood. I want him in every league I'm in.
I love it. I love the pick. I'm definitely on board with you for this one. We saw him through the first 6 games last season without DeAndre Hopkins. He absolutely tore it up. I don't know what the timeline is for Kyler Murray. The team's obviously going to be really bad, I think, with or without Kyler Murray, but obviously you want Kyler throwing the ball. Yeah, this one seems like an easy one. He's going to average probably 9-10 targets a game easily. The touchdowns have to go up 3. I mean, he's going to get more than that. Love the pick. He's a guy that I would be looking for everywhere.
What was he was wide receiver what?
4.
No, his
Before-
ADP this year.
28.
Yeah, you kind of lost me on the fantasy unlucky metric.
Mm-hmm.
But that aside, man, this is the lockiest of locks. This is close to dark horse territory for me, honestly. If Hollywood is in he's WR28 has him in a flex play, and honestly, I'm happy with him if he's my WR2. He was killing it last year before he got hurt, like you said. I think you're returning at least his ADP. I think this is if you can pull Hollywood at his ADP, I think you're thrilled. This is a good lock.
I think so too.
Wayne, take the wheel on the lock because mine's going to create some controversy.
Oh gosh, why do you always got to do that, man?
It's just a Clash of the Titans about to happen. That's all.
Yep.
Who are the Titans?
Beggs and myself.
Oh wow, giving Begley Titan status, huh?
He's a fellow co-host. Absolutely, he's a
He
Titan
is.
in his own right.
He's our rebuild Titan. My lock. I wasn't even talking crap, dude. You took an orphan team to the playoffs. That was an honest
That's a rebuild
compliment.
if I ever saw one.
That's an honest
I didn't say
compliment.
anything. I didn't say a single word. I just was basking in the compliment. I appreciate it.
All right, moving on because I feel gross now. My NFC lock is Brandon Ayuk, ADP 69, wide receiver. See, you said 28, but I'm showing 28, so I don't know. We must be using different apps. Anyways, my man was a wide receiver 15 last year, and he didn't miss a single game. He was Mr. Reliable. He ranked 8th in touchdowns with over 1,000 yards receiving. I see a bit of a regression off of 113 targets and a slight touchdown regression, which is why he's more of a top tier flex play, and I'm not assuming that he's going to be a wide receiver 15 again. As long as he can continue to get separation, which he ranked 3rd in last year, he'll continue to be an asset to any fantasy team. He's a start and leave guy you can depend on that can be drafted in the 6th round. That's nothing to stick your nose up to. As long as Trey Lance never gets under center, I love Ayuk this year in my flex spot.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Ayuk and Hollywood are like the two guys that the people who like to go running back in rounds 1 and 2 of drafts. These are the guys they point to. Like, look, I can get prime wide receiver production in the 5th and 6th round. I love Ayuk. I love this pick. You stole him before I could get to him. I don't have anything bad to say at all.
Yeah, I went out and got him in 2 leagues personally, and one of them was for Dalvin Cook. Let's go. Oh, man. Got rid of that grenade before he got released. Pretty much enough said. I'll just leave it with that.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
You're rooting for Brock Purdy, right? If you're an Ayuk owner. Not Trey
Yeah,
Lance.
absolutely.
105 million%.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, onward. And this is where the clash will begin. My NFC lock, Tyler Lockett, ADP 71, wide receiver 31, currently being drafted in the back of the 6th round. Last year, the entire offense was supposed to take a step back after Russell Wilson went to Denver. The Seahawks were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. They were bringing in Geno Smith, who hadn't done anything in his career up to this point. He surprised. He absolutely surprised. It resulted in a wide receiver 13 and wide receiver 16 season out of Lockett and DK, respectively. Lockett finished as that wide receiver 13 with 24 fewer targets and one less game than DK, finishing with almost the same amount of receiving yards and 3 more touchdowns. Geno seemed to be a lot more efficient when he was throwing to Lockett. The guy's been consistent recently. He used to be a guy. I've had him for a few years now. Wayne and I both on one of our dynasty teams, and he went from a throw-in and a trade to like, all right, he's pretty solid. His fantasy finishes over the last 5 years: 13, 15, 8, 13, and 17. Is well better than the ADP that he's getting right now. He's always putting up points. I feel like he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. And I know that, he's probably getting some of this ADP because people are thinking about Jackson Smith and Jigba getting drafted there. But Jackson Smith and Jigba's a slot guy. Tyler Lockett's played both the inside and the outside throughout his career. Last year, Lockett had 1.66 yards per route in the slot and 2.44 yards per route on the outside. He saw 45% of his targets in the slot, but only 2 of his 9 touchdowns and 35% of his yardage there. 31 is disrespectful. He's a lock to beat this ADP, and I fully expect him to.
Wayne?
Oh, I thought the Titans were going to go at it.
It's going to segue into the clash, man. Go ahead and make your assessment here.
Yeah, I mean, his wide receiver finishes have always been high, but they've always been feast or famine. And this past year was the first year where he stringed together a consistent fantasy output that made him a guy that you wanted on your team. Does he continue to do that? Maybe, but it's definitely not worth dropping him all the way down into back end flex territory. I mean, you're happy with Tyler Lockett in your starting lineup if that offense. Pete Carroll's just got a way of getting usage out of his quarterbacks. I think if anything,
whisperer.
JSN helps. Yeah, Tyler Lockett at 31. I disagree with that for sure.
Beggs, what say you?
I'm gonna pull another babe here, and I'm gonna call my shot, and I'm actually gonna agree with ADP. I think this is the year Tyler Lockett falls off. I disagree with you, and I hear your point about him not playing the slot, and I agree with you. He doesn't play the slot, but what Tyler Lockett did last year was he lived in the intermediaries. His average depth of target was 11 yards, 47th best amongst wide receivers. He made his hay in the short game. And I think the addition of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Charbonnet, who is projected to be much better in the passing game than Kenneth Walker was last year, I think they're more inclined to eat into Lockett's targets than they are DK's. Lockett to me is kind of the opposite of Hollywood. He had 9 touchdowns last year. He had the best touchdown to target ratio of any wide receiver in the league who had over 75 targets. As we know, touchdowns are a fickle female. And if we just assume even a 50% regression heading into the year, which I don't think is unreasonable considering his touchdown to target ratio, he would have finished as wide receiver 22 last year. He was buoyed by the touchdowns. DK was second in the league last year in red zone targets, but 20th in touchdowns. Right? So what that tells me, DK got more targets. He got more love in the red zone, but he couldn't connect with Geno. Lockett just happened to make more connections. I think through volume, over time, I think Metcalf, just due to his size, I think he maintains that red zone target share with Geno into the year. And I think it's, you're going to see that shift from Lockett to DK. If you look at Tyler's yards per game, his yards per target, that were his second lowest marks in the last 5 years. And his total scrimmage yards was the lowest in 5 years. But his touchdowns were the second highest. I think we saw a little bit of that, age 30 decline in Lockett last year. He turns 31, and every year now you're going to see, I think, more and more diminishing returns on his production. I know his targets were up, but I think that was more of a function of Seattle throwing the ball more. Geno Smith had more attempts last year than Russell Wilson has had his entire career in Seattle, right? I think there was just more of a pie. I think if you look at the splits from Seattle last year, DK had a 30% target share, Lockett at a 25% amongst wide receivers and tight ends. Noah Fant was second with 13. I don't see any way that JSN doesn't command, at least 13, at least that Noah Fant range, if not a little bit more. They don't get him in the first round without using him. They've never had a slot receiver. Again, I think Lockett is going to live in that area that JSN is. I think DK, he's the deep target guy. He's the red zone guy. Again, I think Lockett is, he's the benefactor, so to speak, of that. In looking at the Pro Football Performance expected fantasy points per game, again, opposite of Hollywood, Tyler Lockett graded as one of the luckiest receivers last year, where his actual production exceeded his expected production. His expected points per game was 12. His actual was 15. That's the difference between wide receiver 28 and wide receiver 16. Father Time is undefeated. Gone. I'm gonna bet against the age 31 receiver, especially one who predicates his game on quickness and speed.
But he also, first off, he would have finished as wide receiver 28 if that's what you just said. But 28 is still better than 31, where he's going right now, and that's if things just fall off completely. I mean, he finished as a wide receiver 13 last year. Is that a sign of sharp decline? It's almost wide receiver 1. He beat DK. He had 24 less targets than DK. I understand the touchdown thing. Touchdowns are they can be all over the place. I'm not gonna lie. He can absolutely come out and score only 4 this year, but he did have good success on the deep ball with Geno Smith. He was efficient with Geno Smith. I feel like it's one of those things to where with Baker Mayfield. You remember Baker Mayfield with Odell Beckham, how they just never really had the good connection because he's just forcing it in there. I kind of feel that chemistry between Geno and DK. Obviously, DK is a much bigger guy, but it just seems like it's so much more fluent in everything with Lockett. He doesn't get hurt. If you've ever watched a Seahawks game and you've seen Tyler Lockett catch the ball, he catches the ball and dives to the ground immediately if there's any defender within 5 yards of him. He preserves his body very well. I feel good about the injury thing. I don't know. It's just hard for me to come off that. Will you accept the doink of meeting his ADP?
Yeah, you know what? I called my shot. I'm gonna stick to it. Yes, I'll take the doink. Here's 2 other points I'm gonna throw out there. Geno Smith led the league last year in completion percentage. He threw the 4th most touchdowns in the NFL last year. I don't think either of those marks are going to hold this year. Right? So I think there's going to also be a natural kind of downshift in the passing game as a whole, because I don't think Geno is going to be as good as he was last year, in my opinion. The other interesting stat I found going, and this was really kind of the crux, the fantasy footballers actually put out a really nice chart kind of showing the age drop-off of wide receivers. In wide receivers whose age is 31, they've only accounted for 7% of all wide receiver 2 seasons in the last decade. 31 is a big cliff, and it's bigger than 30. There tends to be a very dramatic drop off after 30. He would have to buck history to have a wide receiver 2 season.
It can be done. It can be done. Their defense is horrible. It's not the Legion of Boom anymore. That's why Geno Smith threw more than Russell Wilson ever has, and he's probably going to follow it up this year with the same amount. Really, the passing volume is going to be extreme. This team sucks. The defense is not good at all. They still regret to this day trading like 3 first-round picks for Jamal Adams because that guy's trash as far as the safety is concerned.
He might throw as much, but he's not going to be as good this year as he was last year. Led league completion percentage.
I can accept that. All right. Wayne, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, did you have him as a lock?
Did I have him as a lock? Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. We're talking about regression here, and that's fine. There can be a regression. He can still be a lock at 31. We're talking about going from a WR13 to a WR31. The ADP shows a regression. It agrees with a regression. So I don't, do I think there's that much of a regression? Probably not. I mean, I'd definitely go with Goni on the doink.
That's fair. I'm babe at the dish right now on it.
Calling shots all around. Wayne, do you want to pick up or do you want me to?
We all said our locks, right?
Yeah, then Begley took his bust.
Yeah, it's busts.
Who was your bust? Your bust came. Oh, your bust segued because Tyler Lockett's your bust, isn't it? Ah, yeah. Go ahead and go. I was gonna say I thought we were talking about Tyler Lockett a long time there. Makes more sense.
It was 2 segments, man. We just the Titans were clashing over here, and I wanted you to get a word in. Now moving on to something ridiculous and probably disappointing. My NFC bust. I couldn't really find one. Not even gonna lie. We do a draft. Hey, I know. We do a draft for this thing, Mad Mob. It's a snake draft. It rotates each time we go through the divisions. I wanted Deebo Samuel. Wayne got him. He beat me to the punch. That was basically like the main component right there. I don't really want to pick anyone that I don't really have my heart in. I checked a lot of the other ADPs. There's a lot of guys that are far down. I'm not ready to call Cooper Kupp a bust just yet. I think he has a phenomenal year. I already took my shot on one of the Kings and Austin Eckler. I'm not going to do it with Cooper Kupp. If I could offer up anything, it's that I don't really have the confidence for Kenneth Walker to finish where he's at. It's probably the best I can do for you. He's going as the RB14. They brought in Charbonnet, second rounder. It's just I feel like the work is going to get cut in. I don't really want to say the injuries are necessarily a scare. You know, Wayne talks about it all the time to where you shouldn't be drafting based off of injury. You shouldn't really make decisions based off of injury worry or anything like that. I understand, but the Seahawks just traditionally have given guys multiple carries. Marshawn Lynch was the last guy to get the bulk of it. I mean, Chris Carson, he didn't even get all the work when Rashad Penny was hurt every single year. He was there after being drafted in the first round. So I'm kind of just going with the history of it that he's not going to get the full workload like he got last year. And really, it's just my gut on top of it, which isn't super great analysis. But running back 14 just doesn't really feel good to me if I was going to choose anyone else out of the entire division.
Is that good enough for you, Begley?
No,
that work, man?
I'm just not going to speak to it, man. Just weakness. Go ahead.
Disappointed, dude. Disappointed.
My bust, as Goni said, I got Deebo Samuel. His ADP is 30, wide receiver 16, and I just need someone to explain to me why the ADP thinks there's some triumphant return in store for him. His ADP this year has him, again, as the WR16. In his 13 games last year, he only managed to do better than that in one game. 1 out of 13 games last year, he finished in what his ADP is this year. Now that CMC is in town, they don't need to utilize him as much on the ground. That, along with the steep drop-off in his touchdowns and utilization in the red zone, make him sketchy at best. Last year, he finished outside the top 50 in target separation, true catch rate, and contested catch rate. One thing he finished high in, drops. Too much offense on that side of the field to expect him to be a top-end wide receiver 2 on your team. Again, we talked about Ayuk already, and God bless. He talked. I'm just like freaking sneeze. Hang on.
Oh man, Beggs, you still look disappointed off of my lack of an NFC bust. Mad Mob, he's not mad. He's just disappointed right now. That's the look on his face.
Dead inside. Just, I don't know what to say about it anymore, man. I don't know what to say. This is about the most un-American thing that I've ever seen.
Hey, man, Justin Ross said that I'm a pretty good guy, though.
Oh.
I wish I could keep that. But I got to take out my weird sneeze. Oh, gosh.
Oh, I thought we were just rallying through your sneeze there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll keep it if y'all want me to, but I think I just had like a miniature sneeze stroke.
You definitely sat there frozen with your finger under your nose for a solid 20 seconds.
Yeah, dude, I was hurting. Anyways,
Get a
back
swallower
to it.
of water.
Back to it. Yeah, just too much on that side of the field. Too much offense. They've got him as a WR16, and I think Brandon Ayuk has a very good chance to take that WR1 spot in San Francisco. And we were just talking about George Kittle coming on flaming hot at the end of last year with Brock Purdy throwing him the ball. So Debo coming back as a WR16, there's absolutely no way that I think he's up there.
If you look at his splits before and after CMC, he was much, much worse after CMC got traded to San Francisco. I love the pick. On a quick side note, is there a more talented team in the league than the Niners? They're loaded.
They are. They're absolutely loaded. Do you remember, though?
On both sides.
At the beginning of last season, Beggs, the absolute just ridiculous arguments that we had over Deebo Samuel.
Yes.
Going back to the year before, Beggs and I would go at it at every poker night we possibly had. And it was basically off the back of Deebo being phenomenal. He was absolutely great, but they call it career year for a reason, man. It only happens one time. The man averaged 20 yards a catch that year. He was getting rushing work out of the backfield left and right. He's not that dude. He's not going to return back to that dude. So, I had Deebo last year. I took the shot on him in a startup dynasty that ended up folding after 1 year, which was very disappointing. Disclaimer, none of us ran it. It was a terrible job done. And it sucked every week to have to trot Deebo out onto the virtual gridiron. He made me happy that I played him maybe twice throughout the entire year. And I just wanted to dunk that one on your head one time.
Nah, it was the CMC trade, bro. He was okay before it.
He wasn't averaging 20 yards a catch, that's for sure.
No, he wasn't. Scab. Wayne, you good with the Deebo analysis there? So I'll take the baton and give you my NFC dark horse. I'm going to be quick. Elijah Mitchell, ADP of 131, RB 41. He is the Thunder to CMC's Lightning. To me, I think Elijah Mitchell is the most valuable handcuff in fantasy this year. And I think there's a chance he has standalone value. I think that's probably going to come at the goal line, right in the short yardage situations, early downs. To me, that's a guy that if CMC gets hurt, which we've seen before. You can pencil him in, padlock it up. He's going to give you RB2 production at worst with RB1 upside. Last year the only data point we had when he and CMC played together and are both healthy was week 18. He was the RB7. He's a 4.5 yards per carry kind of athlete, really good vision. He's on the best rushing team in the league. And at 131, it doesn't really cost you anything. Plus, all he has to do is beat out Jordan Mason to get carries. I like Elijah Mitchell.
Man, I took the biggest shot ever on Jordan Mason trying to get some play time last year. He got one game's worth and he did nothing with it. Thought I was being slick in a dynasty.
Yeah.
I agree with you as far as the biggest handcuff goes in football right now, that you make a very good case for Elijah Mitchell. I don't know about the standalone, man, and I definitely don't agree with the goal line work, man. When you're getting down there and you're ready to score, you give the ball to your best player. But something's in the water in San Francisco, and everyone gets hurt there. So, I mean, the percentages went up as far as an injury goes. I just hope it doesn't because I have CMC.
I agree. I mean, I think he really only has value if CMC goes down. You play CMC. He's your massive snap share guy. He's the most athletic. You're going to give the ball to him. If you're talking about straight handcuff value, injury dependent, then yeah, I mean, CMC's definitely had a sketchy injury history at best. And Elijah Mitchell, he's seen the field plenty in his career, so he'll know what to do once he gets that primary back role. But as far as standalone, I kind of disagree with you on that. He's no Samaje Perine. I mean, I'll go back to a year earlier pick in this episode. I think Perine has standalone value as a backup. I don't really think Elijah does, but yeah, I mean, he could definitely be a dark horse if you're betting on CMC's knees to do what they've done in the past.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The problem is we don't have any data points, but they played together weeks 10 through 12. CMC's highest snap share was 66%. But at the same time, he was just coming onto the Niners, right? So there's a learning curve. So we don't really know what that relationship's going to be like. So I would agree with that.
That's fair.
And it's going to be in my opinion, a high scoring offense. So there might be standalone value there. I don't know. I mean, they might go up big and CMC might see the sideline a little bit more, and Elijah Mitchell might get some garbage time points regularly, and garbage time points count exactly the same as regular points in fantasy. So we'll see. Like you said, there's not a lot of data to go on with them playing together, but it's definitely an interesting pick for sure. I don't dislike it at all. It's not Justin Ross. I mean, I'll say that.
All right, going on. My NFC dark horse is James Conner this year. ADP of 66, RB 25. He's probably not the most appealing, but I feel really good about him in a redraft league. Currently going in the 6th round as the RB 25 after finishing as the RB 19 last year. He had a rough start to his season, averaging slightly over 10 points per game. He was injured for the next 3 weeks. He came back from that injury and averaged 18.75 points per game over the next 8 games before missing the season finale. In terms of points per game on the season as a whole, he finished 10th with 15.4. That's better than Ramondre, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Kenneth Walker, and Najee. He's got no competition for touches behind him with Keontae Ingram and Tyson Williams. Gross. He's going to get all the work there. He's the big boy. They're going to depend on him for offense and production, especially if Kyler's out. Head coach Jonathan Gannon endorsed him as the 100% bell cow running back of the team. The offensive coordinator said he kindly buys tacos for everyone every Tuesday without charge. If he stays healthy, this man's going to be a top 20 running back again this year.
Hey, man, you had me at a good quote out of training camp, man.
Hey, dude.
Hey, I'm annoyed that you just took my joke. I was about to say that. Yeah, man. I mean, when you sent this in the chat, I was gonna hate on you, but I kind of looked up some info to try to get you real good on here. I can't, man. I like the pick.
He's just not a sexy pick, man. Like, you think James Conner, and it's not very good. But if you look at the numbers and take out the injury, he was pretty solid.
Rank these three: Aaron Jones, James Conner, and Miles Sanders.
Give me James Conner, Miles Sanders, Aaron Jones.
Wayne.
Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, James Conner.
Oh man! All right, fair.
What do you have, Beggs? How would you rank them? I feel like Miles Sanders could be the guy also.
I have Miles Sanders 1. Have you guys seen the reports out of Green Bay that says Jordan Love sucks at football?
I mean, the dangerous thing that you got to worry about with James Conner is, you're right. He's one of the very few bell cow running backs left. But man, that offensive line is horrendous. Horrendous.
It is.
And they're going to be behind every game, probably. You know,
but the game starts at 0-0, and they're going to establish the run until they're down by about 17 points.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate it by any means. Because, like, a bell cow running back, you got to love. It's just he's on such a bad team.
Yeah. This is an opportunity play for sure. It's 18-plus opportunities a game.
I think I'd go Aaron Jones going, just because when he was good, it was with Trace McSorley, I think, and some other scab like Skelton or something like that last year. Because, Kyler's going to take away some of his rushing production. I like the pick, though, man. You're right. It's not sexy, but it gets the job done.
It's the job done.
All right. I'll finish it up with my dark horse that I had to wrestle away from Begley. He wanted it bad, but I said, no, man, my dark horse. I'm going with Cam Akers. ADP 63, running back 23. Cam Akers is a guy that, in my opinion, can definitely be in RB1 territory early. Last year, he finished off the season hotter than any other running back. He finished as an RB1 3 of his final 6 games, one of which he was actually the overall running back one, and 2 of the remaining 3 he finished as an RB2. The only game he was outside of that, he was the RB25, so he was one outside of it. The Rams have made 0 attempts to replace him. He's still their guy, and at 24 years old, it looks like they're planting the flag on him and keeping him as their guy. After starting off the year slow, coming off of a torn Achilles, he got it together in the last 6 games of the year, where he averaged 4.83 yards per carry, 85 yards per game, and 8 touchdowns. That's just in his final 6 games. He averaged 17 rush attempts per game, which from a volume standpoint is Najee Harris and Saquon Barkley range. Last year, he finished second to last in the NFL in yards before contact, which is not good. But the O-line was young and injured, and then you look at it, and the Rams used their second-round pick to snag a guard in this year's draft, and they have Logan Bruce coming back off of his rookie year, so another year of development under that. So that's definitely going to get better for him there. Just if you go off his final 6 games, he was a top-tier running back, and 6 games is not a small sample size. It was consistency over the final 6 games after coming off of a torn Achilles, where they started him off slow, worked him into the offense, and then once they took the leash off of him, he was one of the best running backs in the NFL behind a terrible offensive line.
Begley hates Cam Akers. He's on the short list of players Begley will never agree to ever, right behind Justin Fields. You couldn't say enough bad things to say about Cam Akers or Justin Fields if you're Begley. So, I like the pick personally. I think I love the pick. I wanted it for myself. And I feel like there's a few running backs this year that are in the dead zone, more or less, the running back dead zone. There's guys this year that I really like to take shots on, and he's one of them for sure.
Not to mention the facilities janitor said that he always flushes the urinal whenever he walks out of the bathroom.
Dude, I also heard he never pees on the floor.
Ever.
Not even a splash.
You know what? I hope he's good at something off the football field because he's just not that good on it. I mean, look at his numbers. Look at his 3-year body of work. He's not a good football player. He hasn't been so far. I'm not going to bet on a 4th-year breakout on a team that actively cut him from the roster last year. He was disbarred from the team for a good chunk of the season.
He came back.
He tore his Achilles, right? He lost. Don't shrug that off, Gone.
Come on, man.
That is a death wish injury for a running back.
Do you think he's at least RB30 or better?
God, man. You know what? Yeah, I think just from pure blunt volume alone, he can probably get to RB30. But there's no way in Hades he gets to RB1. There's no way. He's not good enough. He doesn't catch enough passes out of the backfield either.
Did he tear his Achilles before or after he went on that 6-game run, though?
It was before.
It was before, and so he was still able to do great things afterwards.
Well, I would, just be careful.
Did Rashad Penny ever tear his Achilles? Was he one of them guys or no?
It was
just
Deontay
ACLs.
Foreman.
Deontay Foreman. No. I was just wondering because everyone. Do you remember going into last year how high everyone was on Rashad Penny after he'd been hurt year after year after year after year, and he tore it up the last 6 games of the season, and people wanted to draft him last year. They wanted to take the shot. Cam Akers is that guy. He just did what Rashad Penny did the year before. He just did that last year. The Achilles wasn't a thing. I know you said like look at his body of work, but the Rams have never really committed to Cam Akers since he got there.
And that's my point. That's if you're a good player, teams commit to you.
Not if you're a guy who runs multiple guys like McVay has been. McVay didn't really commit to anyone.
They've committed to him on the last half of the year though. And when you have all these there are really good free agent running backs out there for the taking, plus the draft has gone by, and 0 attempts to get any of them. 0 attempts to get any of them. They like their guy. I'm just confused. Me and you kind of have opposite philosophies, Begley, when it comes to injuries, in that I like to completely ignore past injuries and just draft off of what I think is happening, which again, like if we take all that aside and I just look at how he finished last season, his last 6 games, I'm looking at a top 3 running back. A top 3 running back over his last 6 games. 8 touchdowns across 6 games. I mean, it's phenomenal. And again, he has Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley volume that he's getting. If that's not commitment, I don't know what is. So I'm just like, and then you've got guys like you're calling your shot on Justin Ross, who's got a degenerative spinal issue and had missed college years and his rookie season off injuries. So I'm just confused why Cam Akers' injury history is a negative for him, but it's not a negative for other players.
Well, I call Justin Ross my long shot as the very last pick in your redraft league. I mean, his ADP's in the right just shy of 200. It's very different than Cam Akers' ADP. So that's, first of all, very different. Second
Philosophies are the same, though.
Well, the philosophies aren't the same because I think we've got a lot of data that shows running backs who have Achilles injuries don't really come back very strong. It just saps them a lot of their mobility. I have to look at spinal injury data. I'm sure it's not strong. And I'm sure Justin Ross could be a cut candidate. But again, your last pick in a redraft league cost you nothing, right? I mean, it means nothing. But look, here's my thing. I understand you want to take his last 6 games, and I can appreciate that. But I also, you can't ignore his first 25 and how poor they were, right? I mean, this is a guy who caught, if you look, he caught 13 balls last year, and that was the highest of his career. The most passes he caught on the backfield in Florida State in the season was 30. He's horrible on third down. He's horrible in pass protection, right? And I just don't see him being a bell cow. I don't see him getting that, staying on the field that much.
And yet he was a top 3 running back with no receiving work in his last 6. Again, I'm not looking at his last game. I'm not looking at his last 2 games. I'm looking at a third of the season. I'm looking at the final third of the season heading into the offseason. I'm not. It would be different if he was doing good in week 2, 5, 11, 15. That's totally different. That means he's just not finding his footing. I'm talking about 6 consecutive games to end the season that were phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't think you can discount the first 25 games before that either and just throw those out of the window, right? And expect those not to factor into your projections. I mean, he had one game in week 16 where he scored 34 points on 3 touchdowns, right? That's if you take that outlier out,
that's a bell cow.
Much normally.
If you take that out, then he still had 2 RB1 finishes and 2 RB2 finishes. If you take that out, he's still a very good running back.
So, all right, let's just I'll make you a doink. I think his ADP is fair where it is. You think he outperforms it? How far?
I don't know. I think his ceiling is RB1.
Okay, so I'll let you have. I'll tell you what. I'll give you RB15 or better, and I'll take RB15 or worse.
No, I'll take his ADP.
Well, if he's your dark horse pick, though, you're projecting him to be above ADP.
Yeah, that's fine. You just sat there and scratched your head thinking he could possibly get to RB30. I'll take his ADP, which is a running back too. The way you say it, you tear your Achilles. You tear your Achilles and you're done for.
Yeah, but you're not saying he's your lock. You're not saying he's guaranteed to perform at ADP. You're saying he's a dark horse. He's going to be performing better than ADP.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'll tell you what.
You can for sure.
All right. But you don't want to put a doink on it?
No. I'll take his ADP.
Yeah, that's not what you're saying. So.
Well, that's fine. As long as we can all agree here that even the Cam Akers haters know that he's worthy of a starting spot in your lineup, at the very least your RB2, then you're happy with picking him, especially where his ADP is.
I don't think RB2, but if he's my RB3, I'm happy. I'll give you that.
Whoa, his RB2 is, or his ADP is RB2.
I'm okay if he's my RB3, if he's my third running back. That's what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, but why wouldn't you doink his ADP if you think he's gonna?
It's RB30, right? Isn't that what you said?
No, his ADP is RB23.
24.
RB24?
24.
I thought it was RB30.
No.
Well, he's closer to
make
30.
You reconsider?
No. I'm not going to let Wayne call a dark horse and then want to take a doink at ADP. That defeats the purpose of a dark horse.
Yeah, no. Dark horses are, they're long shots.
They are. Exactly. They most certainly are. Say it again. A little louder for everybody in the back.
They're long shots.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. They are, my friend.
Yeah, there are long shots, and then there are just no shots. Justin Ross, no shot.
We'll see.
I know you thought you had me there. Justin Ross is.
I didn't.
You call him no risk, high reward. I call him no risk, no reward.
We'll see what happens in preseason.
Just doing stuff for funsies out here. When there's no risk and no reward, it's just for fun.
It's just pointless analysis going, isn't it? It's just pointless analysis.
I won't say that. I respect the dart throw, and I really enjoyed Begley's segment about all the kind words that everyone he's ever met had for him. I really enjoyed it.
Man, thank the Lord he didn't find any hometown newspaper articles. We'd still be on him.
He was a blessing put upon this earth.
You know what? Justin Ross for MVP.